Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
And welcome to the Dynasty Nerd Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Richard Dotson. He's Matthew O'Hara.
Hey.
He's Garrett Price.
How's it going?
It's a Tuesday. It's election day.
Yeah,
God bless America.
You hear how I wasn't ready because you switched it up last week? I wasn't sure if I was going to be second or third.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I put it to the polls, and you took the lead in the polls. Like, not only
You're
does he have a better voice, a better face, a better personality.
Why am I even here?
Why are you here? God.
It's been fun being on the show.
Well, that sums it up.
This is my retirement. This is my sail into the sunset.
Well, you
Because
know,
I want you here.
Thanks,
sometimes you got to take a look in the mirror and be sad. Story of my life.
Richard.
Be sad.
But I'm not in front of the mirror. I'm happy. Look at me.
There you go.
Smiling.
I'm looking good.
You don't want to look inside. That's not funny. People really are sad.
This is getting dark.
I just wake up and I'm just glad I'm here.
It's a nice fresh hairdo you got there, haircut.
Oh, thank you so much for
I think you just
noticing.
got that trimmed up.
I mean, yeah, I think so.
All right.
Could have been
think so.
within a week, I think.
Oh, I was like, were you asleep
I
when
saw,
they did it or
I saw him
something?
this weekend. We went to the Browns game. But
had a hat on.
you had a hat on,
Yeah.
so I didn't notice.
So, but thank you for noticing. I appreciate it. I'm blushing just a little bit for the people listening at home. It always feels good to be noticed. You know what? Give me that mirror.
I just felt like you needed that confidence boost, Rich. Go ahead.
Sometimes you need
Every
it.
day, please.
A couple weeks ago on the Nerd Herd, I got Garrett C. Price.
Whoa.
C stands for cutie.
Oh, wow.
And now I'm not allowed to look in the mirror. So
No.
a little bipolar feeling right
Lot
now.
of mixed signals, Rich is sending.
Don't bust those truths. Don't look. Don't look. Just have faith and believe.
Just enjoy it.
Yeah,
Just enjoy it.
You know what? That guy
Take the compliment and just move
That guy
on.
knows what he's talking about. Hey, and listeners, just know you are beautiful too. Be like, you know, I really respect this guy's opinions more.
He
All of a
is
sudden.
smart.
You know, I mean, he's
Makes
not
a lot
always
of
right,
sense.
but I mean, who is? Who is, right? At least he makes me feel good. Thanks, listeners. We're here for you. And just know, if you're listening, I really do love you.
We do.
We would get along.
That is authentic.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I get along with most people. It's pretty. Well, actually, I hate a lot of people too, though. I just really don't like people. If I get along with anybody, it's cool. Like if you play Dynasty, I just automatically assume you're cool. You're cool. Like you get it.
somebody
You're
to hang
like,
out
you know what? I got a hobby.
Hobby. I got a thing that I do that I like.
Yeah, you know that thing, fantasy football? Yeah, of course. Oh boy, do I take it to another level. Oh, you play a lot? Every day.
Every day. Oh,
I
yeah.
had to go get stitches the other day, and my surgeon guy was like behind my ear. And he's like, yeah, so what do you do? Blah, blah, we're talking about it. He's like, oh, so like you're busy now, football season. I'm like, yeah, it's part of it. He's like, well, what do you do after the season? I was like, oh, that's where it gets real busy. He's like, there's nobody's playing football. I'm like, I know, but we talk about the college getting. I was like, yeah. So like, I do it all year long. He's like, you talk fantasy football all year long? I'm like, uh-huh.
Oh,
It is funny when I tell people, they're like, oh, you're probably the busiest right now. I was like, this is like the second busiest. But I was like, usually like March through May is the busiest.
Yeah, this is easy time. Like the story's playing out. Like,
Yeah.
the movie, it's like you did all the production, all the writing,
Now
all
you're-
the editing. And
You're
like,
just
now
driving
you're
the
just watching
car.
the movie. Yeah,
You're
the
building
script's
the
real.
car in the off season. Right now, you're just driving it.
Yeah, with the windows down.
Hey,
Hot boy summer.
I actually had the top down on the way over.
Did
here.
you really?
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
Just
now-
topless.
78 degrees. Are
Look
you
at
kidding
you.
me?
Dude, stop it.
You got to take advantage of days like that in
You sure
November.
do. It is so
Lord.
nice. Dude, it's so nice
It
outside.
really is.
Oh, God bless America. So anyways, Dynasty Fantasy Football is what we talk about usually on this show. We always just pass
Eventually
the
we get
first
there.
5 minutes. So today's show is going to start off with a segment called Should We Buy High? We're going to have a list of players here that are already really succeeding and are expensive in fantasy football, right? Like, so it's always like a good thing to talk, like when Garrett brought to the table of talking players, buy low, good deals, these windows.
Yeah.
But like, I have a good strong saying I always like to say. See, I inferred it as strong. Very strong saying.
I like to say.
It's good. It's a very good saying. Everybody loves it. Everybody agrees it's a good saying. that,
I just feel like I slid into a Saturday Night Live skit just there.
Sometimes an overpay today is an underpaid tomorrow, right? Like it's okay for people to come out at you and say, wow, you really overpaid. But meanwhile, 5 years later, when you're still getting running back one production from Alvin Kamara, or it's 4 years later and you've got 4 straight years of running back one production from Joe Mixon, it's like, wow, boy, did I sure find myself a deal. It's like my wife coming home from shopping. Like, boy, did I save us some money today. Like, did you? Those are
$400.
Those are a lot of receipts you have in your hand there. I mean, if that's all you got was those little things of paper, you're right, babe. I'll eat those. So, yeah, we're going to talk about some players. Like, are they Garrett put together a list here, and we're going to talk, like, are they worth their price point? He went into Dynasty Nerds Trade Finder, which is in Dynasty GM. So if you're a member of the Nerd Herd, you get the Dynasty Nerds app, and in that app, we have many plethora of tools. Whether you just click on a player and you get their players page and it gets you a lot of good information. My favorite thing is it tells you like who owns that player and where that player stands on that player's roster.
Right.
Like, ooh, like same thing. Like
that's their wide receiver 6.
Well, I want DJ Moore. Yeah, he's their wide receiver 4. Like I can get this guy for cheaper. He's wide receiver 1. Like I probably shouldn't come knocking.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
But the trade browser, if you go in there, so we have all our users, all the leagues are linked. Whether it be Flea Flicker, all these multiple different leagues, we pull real trades in for those formats. So it's going to show you real life trades as they happen. So a lot of trades that we have in here are like recent trades that went down literally within the last couple of days for said players. Garrett, how did you compromise this list? Why did you select these players that we're about to talk about? Was it certain attributes that this player had to check off?
So basically what I looked at when I put together this list of players, like, should we buy high? And I'm not necessarily saying we should buy all of these guys high, but I think they are good players for test cases for us to be able to look at and say, do I expect player A to be able to at least continue on their trajectory and or potentially even improve upon what they're doing, despite them already being a top tier player for this season. And so then I went in and I pulled up a bunch of trades to say, like, okay, what is the actual asking price? These are not proposed deals. These are deals that actually went down in real leagues. So is that price a price that I would be willing to pay? Or are we saying, what? Sometimes guys are just too expensive. We can't afford to pay for them. It's just too much. But there's other players where, they might be at the highest point, the most expensive they've ever been, but they might still be a value compared to us expecting them to either continue this or potentially even get better. So most of these guys, for the most part, are younger players that are going to be viewed as top guys or towards the top of their position right now in Dynasty Fantasy Football.
And your goal as a Dynasty owner, the quickest way to a championship is acquire as many top 30 players as possible. And if you can envision one of those players under the age of 27, 28 years old, that's when multiple firsts become an easy giveaway for me. We if you go back and you search our episode history, we go over, the odds of how often a draft pick even hits or makes it rosterable. When you get that 50% mark, it really makes it kind of silly if you would ever think about not giving up draft picks for what's a top 30 player. Definitely under the age of 27, that you can have what you would
Multiple
hope at
seasons.
least 3 to 4 years, because 3 to 4 years of top 5, top 6 production from a player is worth way more than 6 years of 2 players that are just mediocre players that you could roster or put on your lineup that are just mids. Like same thing. Like, would you rather have Michael Pittman for the next 6 years, or would you rather have 3 years of Tyreek Hill from the previous 3 years, or 3 years from, the last 3 years of even Mike Evans? Yeah, you'd rather just take that one player over the long term. So let's talk about some of these players and how we feel each of them stand in our eyes when it comes to Dynasty Fantasy Football.
All right, so the first guy that we're going to ask, should we buy this player high, is Devon Achane. Now, Achane had an early season lull. Hopefully you did buy during that lull. And he was he was one of those guys that we talked about multiple times on this show, on YouTube, and written content. Like, we were saying, hey, this is the time to buy. If there is any window as to get any sort of discount at all, go capitalize on it. Well, many people did, but I'm sure there are people that missed the window. So now we're asking, should we buy high? So For Devon Achane, he had that early season lull, but that was directly correlated to when Tua was out. While Tua was out, the guy put up like sub 7 points per game. It was rough. But since he's been back, in the games where Tua started, he's averaging 27.8 PPR points, which far and away would be the running back one right now if he just had those games. This is despite, though, not having the explosive plays that we've been accustomed to from last year from a guy like Devon Achane. So last year, in 2023, he averaged 12.6 explosive run rate, which means 12.6% of the time he was rushing for 15 yards or more. And that's just rushing. That's not even receiving what he was doing. Over 12.5% of the time, he was getting 15 yards or more in a rush. The next closest last year was Jahmyr Gibbs at 8.2. However, this year he's only at 4.3. So he's not getting as many of those long runs, those chunk runs that we've come accustomed to, despite him still putting up a good amount of points, which would maybe suggest that there's still more room in a scary world where he could even potentially get better. So the question is, should we buy high on Devon Achane? Now, I don't know if you guys want to go through some of the trades or what, or just give your general thoughts.
Do you want to go through the trades first, Matthew, or do you want to talk about general thoughts?
Let's go general thoughts, and then we'll dive into some trades if they make some sense.
That makes sense.
For me, I do think Devon Achane is the kind of guy you want to go out and buy high on. You mentioned the 27.8 points per game. The only guy that was higher than him in that same bracket, that little same time frame, was Alvin Kamara, and he was just slightly better. And we all know that Alvin Kamara is one of these kind of all-time great running backs as far as fantasy football goes.
Absolutely.
And despite the fact that the explosive run rate went down, that was almost an unsustainable amount. 12.6% of his plays being explosive runs. So the fact that he's able to maintain such a high level of fantasy football success, and that rate has come back down to earth, I think that's great for his long term kind of outlook and kind of his projection in the fantasy football points standpoint. So for me, it's a no doubt. Devon Achane is one of these guys. He's an outlier. He is the type of guy that you want to go out and get now before they become basically unobtainable and cemented on somebody's roster. If anyone is a little bit nervous about the Tua stuff, like, hey, he only performs when Tua's in and Tua is very unreliable, then you got to strike while the iron's hot. Go out and get him, because if Tua doesn't ever have another concussion, or if they just figure out a better backup option next year for Tua whatever the hell his name is, for Tua, then maybe the offense doesn't have this big drop off if Tua's out. And if I'm Miami, that's my priority in the offseason. I got to find a better backup, that somebody that can run this offense.
Sure.
If Tua was to miss time. So for me, it's a no brainer. Go out and get Devon Achane, even if you feel like you're overpaying.
Yeah, I mean, I know today's election day. Might as well be Valentine's Day. When we say Achane's name, my heart flutters. It makes me feel a little lovey-dovey, a little blush in the cheeks, piggybacking ooff of Matt over here. And you're right. And you go over those numbers, when you talk about Tua and Achane's numbers together, when Achane's with Tua, he's averaging mid-25 points per game. That's quarterback. That's like QB1 numbers. That's Josh Allen numbers overall. So that's like, you're talking elite overall fantasy football finish.
That's the Christian McCaffrey cheat code.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Those are the type of guys that just bring you right to the championships.
Yeah, and this year without Tua, you mentioned Heron averaged 6.9 points per game. And I saw a good tweet earlier. I wrote down here from @RyanJ_Heath. He's with Fantasy Points Data. Does really, really good work.
He does.
And, he has Dolphins target shares by position as of today. Running backs and tight ends are seeing 63% of the targets. Wide receivers are seeing 37%. And Tua starts this year, the running backs and tight ends seeing 53.7%, wide receivers 46.3%. So they're actively looking towards the running back. And Achane's targets per game, his route share is
stupid.
It's ridiculous. And for me, when I go buy him, 100%, I would pay easily 2 firsts plus a player on top for a guy like Achane. And running backs, it's hard for me to ever get in that boat where I'll pay a price like that for a running back, the most fluid position on your roster. But the way he wins, and definitely how he dominates in the run game, and it was very encouraging this past week as well, is when Raheem Mostert fumbled. Right? Was it right before the half or right after half? One of the two. He pretty much, his carries went down to almost nothing, at that point. And Achane was still the guy, not Jalen Wright, even though Jalen Wright's carries upticked, was the guy in the red zone carries there. So very encouraging. But the way he wins in a passing game, he really reminds me, and I think he has the best odds at this point, just because of what we've seen to this point as well. And I know who the other running backs are out there to compare us to. I think he's your best chance. It's weird because he's not my running back 1 overall, and maybe I should change that in Dynasty. But I think he gives you the best chance for the way that he wins to be the next Alvin Kamara. And when it comes to Alvin Kamara, after this year, he'll have 7 straight years of being a high-end running back 1. That is beyond GOAT material. That is never done. Christian McCaffrey hasn't broken that mold. Christian McCaffrey, I think, is trying to break into the 6.
We haven't seen it since Forte and LaDainian Tomlinson were like the last guys to do it.
To go into that kind of, yeah. So, you're talking Hall of Fame level fantasy football player. When it comes to Dynasty fantasy football, when you can find a player like that, that's goated like that, prime Antonio Brown falls in that category, right? Tyreek Hill has that window as well. But a player like that, more so at the running back position, because it is so fluid. Right. How many more doors that open for you when it comes to your draft? That is it's hard to put a price tag on something like that. So for me, 2 firsts plus, yeah. And I'm giving you a running back that you might I'm talking Jonathan Taylor plus a first. Here you go. There's not many guys Saquon.
So I'm guessing you would do all these trades fairly easily then, right, Rich?
Let's run down some of them.
Let's run some real trades.
So here's real trades that have happened over the past couple weeks. Devon Achane and Josh Jacobs.
This is a Superflex league.
Superflex, and these are all tight end premium as well. So Devon Achane and Josh Jacobs, you're giving up Michael Penix, 25 first, which I'm assuming in this deal has to be a pretty early one, and then Dylan Laube. For me, that's easy, right?
Very easy.
Okay.
I would do that for just Devon Achane, but I'm getting Josh Jacobs back. Yeah. Thanks for the lube application.
The Dylan Laube, you mean?
That's how you want to say it. I'll lobby you up.
Another one, just 125 first and a fourth for Devon Achane and a third.
Yeah, that's easy.
Listen, dude, I'm real hesitant. I'm gonna need a third back. All right, Billy.
This one here is the one that I was like, okay, this one actually seems like a trade that would be more difficult to make a decision on. Devon Achane and DJ Moore, you're giving up Baker Mayfield in a Superflex tight end premium. Zay Flowers, who right now is a wide receiver 1, and a 2026 second. Where would you go on that one? That's a tough one.
This one is the
one's
toughest.
more realistic, I feel like.
Where's Baker at right now in the stand? Is he number 2?
He's 2.
Yeah. 2nd overall quarterback.
Yeah, looking studly as ever.
Yeah. He's
Miss
looking
you
good.
big. Always will.
Yeah.
I was right. All you bitches out there. I was right. I was right all along. I saw your hate messages. They weren't hate messages. They were more poke me in the belly with a giggle.
This is really tough, but I would still go the Devon Achane side. For me, I would rather Zay Flowers by a little bit over DJ Moore, but it's not significant. I don't think there's a drastic divide between those two players. So basically thinking where would I be willing? And at this point, I think I would be willing to draft Baker higher than many people would. I don't know. Well, maybe not higher than Rich, but I'm still looking at him as a 2nd to 3rd round pick in a startup. Whereas at this point, Devon Achane is bordering on a 1st round pick for me in a startup.
Yeah, great 2nd round startup value. This trade would come down for me would really depend on my quarterback situation.
Okay, I think that's fair.
I would have to be able to sustain the Baker loss, and to the point of even if it's Kirk Cousins is my back, it doesn't even have to be anybody even but
somebody solid,
great, but somebody could put in there. But at the same time, I talked about this other day. I think Matt, you and I were talking on yesterday's show. I was saying, some people, one of the big missteps in Superflex leagues is this feel your need of I have to start this other quarterback in my Superflex spot. No. If you have Devon Achane, put up quarterback 1 numbers, you start Devon Achane over
Daniel Jones.
Who I know he's doing pretty good in fantasy.
He's been solid, but yeah.
But but you understand, Deshaun Watson.
I would hope so.
Definitely now. Or Jameis Winston.
There
some of those lines. But if I could if it was okay, I'm taking the Achane here side too, because mostly the Moore and Flowers somewhat wash each other out. Obviously, I'd probably want Flowers over Moore. Achane Achane, Baker, like you could say they have a similar lifespan if he turns into the next Kamara and you can get 7.
Baker's 29.
Yeah, so if you get like 7 years out of Achane, like, but again, the difference there though is running back's the most easy commodity to replace, and the quarterback is one of the more hard. That'll be in Superflex.
It's true.
Harder commodities.
But on the flip side, we know
that's where the weight value comes.
The point differential between the top tier running backs and then like the mid tier versus quarterbacks and the mid tier is, that's one of the biggest gaps is at running back. So for a more win now approach, the running back is going to get you the most bang for your buck.
As long as you have the quarterback.
As long as to
replace,
and that's where it really comes down. As long as I had a quarterback to replace Baker, hard bargain to come by, but this was one player that I felt like, sky's the limit for. And you're talking, we always talk about the tight end where the commodity, like it's such a small window. When it comes to consistent elite young running backs, that window's just as small.
It is.
Like, and even some of those guys aren't like Breece Hall is not giving you the production you really want for somebody you have ranked number 1 overall, right? Like, when you get a guy like Joe Mixon outpacing them and has been for the last 2 years, and the weighted value is so drastically different between the two players. Like when you're ranked that high or your cost is so high, you have to demand. You need I demand you do this, but you need that production. Like you have to see the value there. Otherwise, the hole for what you gave up or where you took him in your startup could be such a massive hole to climb out of.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let's go to the next guy here, Garrett Wilson. So after a slow start to the season, which by the way, I think like week 3 or 4, I want to say it was week 4. That was our main buy. That was the one I was like, we don't have any other options. It's just Garrett Wilson.
Yes.
And that was the game right after that. He had like 20 targets and he's been bonkers. Well, since then he has been the quarterback. He's been the wide receiver 1 overall the past 5 weeks. He has been just otherworldly. I mean, and you look at the catch that he had this past week.
God, man.
That was one of the greatest catches I've ever seen.
I mean, think of the highlights we saw this weekend. We saw
Barkley.
We saw that. We saw Barkley do some magic.
I've never seen anyone hurdle somebody in reverse.
I don't even understand how it happened, but I've enjoyed watching it a billion freaking times.
I watched it so many times.
I never got sick of watching it.
I made Denise watch it, and she doesn't care. I was like, no, Denise, you have to watch this.
I made my kids watch it. Are you kidding me? I was like, look at this. My 9-year-old daughter's like, oh my gosh, how did he do that? I'm like, I have no idea how he did that.
Oh, my wife had a completely different reaction. She was just like, I don't get it.
Yeah, man.
Kind of weird.
Yeah, it is weird.
All that being said, Garrett Wilson.
And Devontae Smith, don't leave him out. That catch was
Devontae
amazing.
Smith.
Yeah, I'm
awesome
sorry.
too.
I meant to keep. I know
you want to go there, but that was amazing.
We got totally sidetracked.
No, he had an amazing catch there in the end zone as well. But over the past 5 weeks, 22.6 points. Despite the addition of Devontae Adams, Wilson is still 7th in first target read in the offense overall in the season. There's even potentially some room for improvement in catchable target rate, as Wilson is only at 78.5%, which is 68th in the NFL of guys with 24 or more targets, well behind other big names that are producing well, like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Chris Godwin, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Malik Neighbors. All these guys have significantly better catchable target rates than he does. So there's even potentially room for improvement now that him and Rodgers seem to be getting on a better page now. So all of that being said, is it worth it? Should we look to buy Garrett Wilson high?
I think this is a good one to go by I think the clear answer here for everybody is yes, right? A young receiver who we've had ranked significantly high without doing anything now breaks that mold, and he's a top 3 fantasy football wide receiver. Like you said, over the last 5 weeks, he's wide receiver 1 overall. Everybody wants Garrett Wilson in Dynasty. Like, who does not want Garrett Wilson Dynasty? So I think that's a clear buy. I think we should do this by trade. I think you got some good ones here from the trade browser from the Dynasty GM. So yeah, I think we should talk about those because I think the answer is yes. And it's going to show you what real trades went down. I mean, there's a window there.
All right. So the first one here, Garrett Wilson and a first for Caleb Williams. Garrett Wilson and a 25 first for Caleb Williams. Would you guys do that deal?
Yeah, that one's difficult, right? Caleb Williams, I mean,
let's just assume it's a mid.
Yeah. No, I mean, Caleb Williams coming off, basically, he was the number 1 overall pick this past year. wouldn't say he's had the smoothest start, but he's looked better
at times.
And now we're seeing him kind of look a little worse.
Yeah,
we've seen the pass attempts kind of go down in that offense over the past 4 or 5 weeks. They're kind of at the bottom of the league there in pass attempts over that span. And we're kind of seeing the opposite. We're seeing like Garrett Wilson take off here. So if you're getting Garrett Wilson and a first, oh man, yeah, I'm leaning towards the Wilson side of this one, and it's because I'm not 100% sold on Caleb Williams.
Sure.
So and now that we've seen enough out of Wilson, you get a first round pick back as well. Who knows? You lose a quarterback, you got a wide receiver in there. Maybe that pick isn't all that great too, so who knows? Maybe that ends up being a high pick and you can just get a quarterback there and kind of reset it,
You very well could.
Yeah,
it's hard not knowing the pick here. Garrett Wilson, Caleb Williams, both young players. Nobody can sit here and say they're sold on Caleb Williams right now because it's impossible to say. That being said, I do think he's a long-term answer there in Chicago. I think he'll end up being just fine from a fantasy football perspective too. Can he ever be quarterback 1 overall? I don't know about that. I don't see that, but there's still value in his youth because he is a very young asset.
He's young and he's getting rush yards too, which is nice.
And listen, bonus. If you want a player like that, right? Like that's what you'd have to give up, something along those lines. Now, if it's me, I'm flipping it and I'm going for Jayden Daniels. Like if that's a price point I have to pay, like I want Jayden Daniels. Somebody a little bit, not a little bit.
So if you have to give up Wilson and your first, you want Jayden Daniels, is what you're saying.
Pretty much, yeah. Okay. That's where I would go for Caleb Wilson here. But like I understand the price point, and for me, what I want the Garrett Wilson side again, it really comes down to my quarterback situation as well. Because
assuming all things are equal, you get strong receivers and strong quarterbacks. Yeah. Like let's assume it's all equal.
If we're assuming it's equal, which I'm gonna always just kind of I guess I have to assume is I would take the Garrett Wilson 25 first because I think. If Caleb Williams pans out, he's currently quarterback 21 right now, which it's nothing. He's played 10 games, 9 games in NFL for the first time out. You know what I mean? Like it's fine there. And he's young enough where this shouldn't be an issue. But if he ends up being like that mid-range quarterback,
if he ends up being a guy like Trevor Lawrence who has got a lot of hype and never pulls it off and performs at that high level that you expect, you're crushing with the Wilson side.
Right. But at the same time, right now, Trevor Lawrence is, I think, still right around quarterback 11 on the year. It's a very valuable asset, definitely in Superflex. So he's still a valuable asset.
No doubt about it.
And it kind of falls in a category, like, even at Caleb Williams at quarterback 15, he stays quarterback 15, which is high-end quarterback 2, every single year for 10 years. Like, that is dynasty gold, right? Like, you're going to top 50 overall scoring player. Like, that is fantastic. But, yeah, I'd still lean the first side, because I'm getting a top 3 overall receiver. And that first at least puts me in position to gives me another first, and I have 2 firsts. Maybe I go trade those 2 firsts for a quarterback I like. Maybe I use one of those to possibly get Bo Nix, and somebody got him for possibly a second. Like I could probably get another quarterback that overall in the long run very well for the price of, even if I have to give that first up and another first to get 2 firsts for another quarterback I want. If he's not like grade A meat, if he ends up being like on a points per game basis, even relatively close to the Caleb Williams, you still won that trade pretty massively because now you just got Caleb Williams for a first, 2 firsts.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, Garrett Wilson for 2 firsts.
Yeah. And I look at it too as like, where would I draft these guys in a startup? Probably I'd feel comfortable with both right in the middle of the second round, probably right now. That's probably the range I'm looking at. Maybe early second, but I'm looking at them right about the same spot. He's like, let's draft right now.
So do you know about me, Garrett Price?
So if that's the case, like now I'm just getting an extra first on top because I think I would value them pretty close even without the pick.
That was going to be my end point. Like you feel really good if you get Garrett Wilson and something bad happens and Caleb Williams is just that middle tier guy. But even if Caleb Williams hits, I feel pretty good that Garrett Wilson is going to be on a really good trajectory to be one of these top 3, 4, 5 guys at the wide receiver position. So it's not like you've given up any, you know what I mean? You haven't given up anything. You still have this really good commodity and you got a first round draft pick on top of it. I mean, you at least got a good player.
It'll turn out like the real life Rams Lions trade. Like one team got Goff, one team got Stafford. Both teams were pretty happy with how things worked out.
Absolutely.
So, a couple other trades here. This one was really tough. 26 first, so a year later, and Wilson for Marvin Harrison Jr. and a 25 second.
Yeah, see, this is easy for me. I'm taking Garrett Wilson's side.
Okay.
Pretty easily because I get the first.
Even though it's a year later?
I don't care. It's still
Okay.
first.
All right.
I can wait one more year. Better chance that team's going to be crappier, right? I don't know. Like,
Sure.
yeah, it's still first, right?
Right, absolutely.
And listen, Marvin Harrison's not performing at a high level right now.
He's been a roller coaster. He's been a lot like Caleb Williams.
Which is okay. I could, you can water the plant. It still could grow into a very beautiful thing. But Garrett Wilson, we know 100% is good right now. Like 100%. And I get a first. Like, cool, I give up a second, but there's a drastic difference between a first and a second. Unless it's pick 13, 12, then it's not much.
Then it's not a massive difference.
That could be. Depends on the tiers. So, yeah, to me, this is pretty easy. I would snatch Garrett Wilson here. If somebody's like still got that Marvin Harrison, like, love in their eyes and, flowing that addiction through their veins, and they offer me that, I'm taking that easily.
Agreed. Yeah, no, I think that's the right answer.
Last one, Trey McBride, straight up. Garrett Wilson. This is tight end premium.
Yeah, I don't care. Not even close.
I agree.
Yeah, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 overall over tight end, like tight end 3 and tight end, even in tight end premium. Yeah, no brainer. Garrett Wilson.
Agreed.
Done and done. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about another running back here, Bijan Robinson. So the big kind of shtick early on for Bijan last year and the early part of this year was just kind of the inconsistency in usage. And that's always been part of the issue. But it seems like that's normalized and it seems like that's leveled out. Bijan Robinson is now having a very good season. We have a month straight of him averaging 17 attempts. His high was 21, his low was 13. So staying pretty solid there, right around 17 attempts per game and just under 6 targets per game. High of 7 targets in a game. He did that twice, and then the low of 4. So we're seeing pretty consistent usage out of him. And the biggest part is he's turned each and every one of those games into 20-plus point games. So 4 straight 20-plus point games. It seems like the prophecy of what Bijan Robinson could and should be is starting to materialize. So should we be willing to buy high?
Yes, but it all depends on the deal. Like
Sure.
I don't necessarily. Bijan to me falls in a category of like, I would do a fair deal.
Okay.
Bijan. I wouldn't do an overpay today.
Okay.
Like, just because, like, again, it's a running back. I don't care. Like, he hasn't done anything that makes me go, oh, this is forever good. Like when he dominates in the passing game like Achane does it. That tells me he could be Kamara forever.
Sure.
You know? And Bijan would be just fine. And this fair value is like a really good player. I mean, you're getting almost just about any receiver you want back, almost, except for a couple. So I wouldn't give like Amon-Ra St. Brown in a first, something along those lines.
Right.
So I think it comes down to trades. We got some good trades in here to talk about. Yes, I would definitely want to buy Bijan. I think that falls in the category of simple yes, but like, what's the cost?
Let me ask you this general question. I mean, if you could get a 22-year-old running back that you say you felt very good about, I'm going to get 4 years out of this guy.
I retract my statement. I would slightly overpay for Bijan. Yes,
because I think that's what
I forgot he's 22.
He's 22 years old.
Yeah,
like there's guys coming in
Retracted.
from this past draft that were like quite a bit. 24.
Tyrone Tracy's about to turn 25.
Yes, he is.
An overpaid today is an underpaid tomorrow. Yes, I forget. And I was thinking, yeah, you're right. Tyrone Tracy, 24, way big difference than 22-year-old Bijan, who can get about 6 more years, probably pretty easily.
Yeah.
That is dynasty. You're plutonium.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Platinum, I think, was what he was going for, but then it went nuclear.
Yeah.
I think
We're blowing stuff up now.
I think plutonium is worth way more than gold.
Okay, yeah, probably.
Probably true.
What powered the Back to the Future car? The DeLorean.
Yeah, plutonium.
That's what I thought. That's why it's so valuable.
That's why it's so valuable.
Turn back
Helps
time.
in time
Yeah,
travel.
you could go back in time and retract that last statement you made.
That would be nice.
So the first straight here, I put in here more of just the, hey, you never know. Go put out offers, because this one shocked me. And this was 2 weeks ago, not even.
Vito.
Somebody got Bijan Robinson and a fourth. They milked for that extra fourth.
I need something back. I am giving up Brandon Ayuk.
Gave up Brandon Ayuk, Marshawn Lloyd, and Tank Dell.
And Tank Dell. I need a fourth back.
I mean, did you hear that Marshawn Lloyd was Jared Wackerly's #1 running back? Come on, guy.
Oh, my goodness. So
It
that
was
one was
tit for
surprising.
tat.
The other two are at least closer to reasonable.
Yeah, screw that trade. Vetoed. Next trade. This is a real trade right here.
Marvin Harrison Jr. for Bijan Robinson straight up. This literally happened a day ago.
This literally happened
two
between
days ago,
you and I
This exact trade happened between you and I
before the season started.
And I'll be honest, and you probably feel similar, where like depending on the week, I've been like, oh, that was a great deal for me. Ah, dang it, I wish I wouldn't have done that. Oh, that was a great deal for me. Oh, dang, I wish. Like right now, I feel like pretty good about it. But
You got Bijan.
I got
Bijan.
Bijan.
Right? Yeah.
I always it's gonna be Bijan forever, but it should be Bijan. You're right.
I would rather have Bijan.
Bijan, yeah, would be the guy that I would want in that trade.
But that falls right in the category of a player you would have like that caliber, like Amon-Ra St. Brown for Garrett Wilson for Bijan Robinson.
But the Marvin Harrison, he's not going great right now, but that thing could change quickly.
All of a sudden, 3 straight games of 20+ points.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen other guys kind of have it click and everything starts to come in place. He's got all the talent in the world, so we're all saying the Bijan side. But that Marvin Harrison side, I don't think you're going to be disappointed either way. Like, even if he turns out to be not as high end as we thought, I think he's still going to end up being the number one guy in that offense. He just needs to kind of get that going.
Oh, I'm splitting hairs here. Yeah, I'm not saying like, oh, Bijan. Like, I wouldn't add a pen. Like, that's not true. I'd throw in like
late second.
No,
any third round pick you.
No, not even that.
Not even that.
I don't know, because I'm going to do, what do you mean you want a third? Like, I'm giving you Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, what are you talking about? Like,
last
21.
one here.
He's not even 22.
Last one here. Bijan Robinson for Jackson Smith and Jigba, Michael Wilson, and a 25 first. We don't know where it is, but let's just, for argument's sake, that it makes the trade better. Let's say it's an early first.
It has to be an early first.
Let's say it's an early first. So let's say early first, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Michael Wilson.
It has to be an early first. When I hit the reject button, I go, man, what could have been? I'm going to be paying attention to when that pick could have been. But I'm taking the Bijan side there. Even because, again, am I taking...
It's basically Achane Genty is like what you're hoping for.
Yeah.
And you're hoping he becomes what Bijan Robinson is.
And then you have Jackson Smith and Jigba. And that's the thing. It's like...
You could slightly win that trade.
Yeah. Is Jackson Smith and Jigba we just saw this past week, the stud muffin? Yeah, when DK Metcalf's not playing, but guess what? DK Metcalf's playing soon. So we just don't know 100% on Jackson and Jigba. Do I think he's a nice player? Yeah. Do I think he might fall more in the category of being like a high-end wide receiver too? Probably. And those are way more easy to get than Bijan.
Right.
And it depends. Like, now if you're saying, hey, you get Achane Genty and Jackson Smith and Jigba, it's like, oh, now it's intriguing. Right?
Yeah.
Because now it's like I'm getting a young running back and the upside of the receiver.
Sure.
And that, of course, depends on my receiver situation. So this is really close. So I would still take the Bijan side because I want the proven top 5 asset, right? Like, again, the proven top 5 asset. Like, anything outside those top 30 players, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, like, those are, you can go find those players. There's a ton of them, and they're attainable. Once you get in that top 30 phase, like, those are really hard to come by. They're really hard to get a hold of. So anytime there is a window to get those, you just want to get those and figure everything else out later. Because the big thing too is like those guys don't lose value. Like if you have to pivot and blow something up or your plan kind of fell through, you're going to get back pretty much equal value for the player you gave up. So that it also comes pretty like insulated where you don't have to fret like, oh, what do I do? You can always just pivot and go back and get a whole bunch of assets for that player if need be.
I guess the counterpoint to that is, there was a time when Saquon was all worldly and then he got injured and then he kind of had a couple down years and there was a drop off in what you could get in return for a guy like that.
Well, I have a lot of Saquon shares.
I mean, he's come back and now he's,
all world again.
But there was a time that if you would have sold 2 or 3 years ago, you would have gotten half of what you would have gotten either now or before the injuries.
Obviously before. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'll end on this. The first is great. It's a nice asset. It's enticing. Same with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Michael Wilson to a lesser degree, but they're all kind of unknowns to some extent. The draft pick is a complete unknown. Who knows what the hell that's going to turn out to be? We've already shown statistics on how much crapshoot that can be. Jackson Smith and Jigba, player I like, but we don't know if he's going to be the guy that we just saw this past week or a more consistent wide receiver 2. Michael Wilson is a guy that's just going to be a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 type of guy, so that he doesn't move the needle much on this one. And like you said, Rich, to your point, Bijan Robinson is the for sure kind of top 5 running back, which is just a harder position to come by,
especially at that age.
Yes. So for me, it's Bijan.
Hey, Nerd Herd, Dynasty Nerds has an incredible new offer from Underdog Fantasy for new customers. When you sign up as a new customer, you'll get a chance at their new customer free pick. But that's not all. Underdog is also offering incredible deposit bonuses. Use the promo code NERDS when you first sign up, and Underdog will give you up to $1,000 in bonus cash with your first deposit. That's right, $1,000 to kickstart your fantasy football journey. Don't miss out on this fantastic opportunity. Head over to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the Underdog app. Sign up today with promo code NERDS and start your journey to fantasy football glory today. Must be 18, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. In New York, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY. And in Tennessee, call 1-800-889-9789.
All right, let's move into the oldest guy on this list, but in quarterback years, still fairly young, only 29 years old, and that's Baker Mayfield. Now, before we get into the trades and the little things I want to say here, this was the one player of all of the guys in this group where when I looked at all the trades across the board, I said, I still feel like all of the trades are still an underpay. Like, so even though we're talking about buying this guy high, I still feel like buying high is not that high. Like, it's still relatively inexpensive. But the reason he's on this list of buy high, he's quarterback 2.
Yep.
So, I mean, he is producing like an elite asset at the moment. So, quarterback 2 on the season, only 29 years old, but it doesn't seem like the consensus has caught up to the production. On KTC, he is quarterback 14 in dynasty value behind guys like Caleb Williams, Justin Herbert, Brock Purdy, and Drake May. Should we buy high? So anything before we get to the trades, Matt, Rich, that you guys want to say?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rich. I know you got something to say. I know you got something to say about Baker.
Yeah.
So with Baker, who got his deal, he'll get another deal in Tampa Bay as well.
Is he a 2-year deal?
3-year deal.
It was a 3-year.
And it'll get extended because he's going to be worth more to the $50 million range a year, and he deserves it. He's playing very good football right now, and it's shown out in fantasy football production. And I think the biggest selling point I could give Baker Mayfield is going to be the easiest selling point for me to give Baker Mayfield, which is going to be what I'm going to say right now, is if you look over the last 2 weeks, he's been without Chris Godwin.
Yep.
He's been without Mike Evans.
Yep.
Right? His number
2
one
elite receivers.
His number 1 target's been his tight end, Jayden.
Jayden's been all worldly.
Over the last 2 weeks, Baker Mayfield is QB 11 over the last 2 weeks without those 2 players. That is such a massive asset in fantasy football to have a QB1, and even a more asset if that is your second quarterback in Superflex. If Baker Mayfield right now is your second quarterback in Superflex, which again, I have a lot of Baker shares. A lot of Baker shares. Dynasty Gold falls right in that category. And for him to show me that he could do that without his 2 number 1 receivers and rely on tight end, again, just give that guy some good weapons and let him cook. And he's out there, and what is he going to give you? He's giving you quarterback 2. This is the Baker that I always believed in, and I talked about in this show. A lot of people thought like it was just because he was the Browns quarterback. When if you go back to the tape, like the college tape, like I loved Baker's tape.
Sure.
Like, and that's why I advocate for the Browns to draft. I absolutely loved him. And for me, you're right, Garrett. When it comes to value, like, again, I could say Brock Purdy's a really good value in Dynasty. Baker Mayfield still, from the trades I see right here, is pretty amazing value.
Yeah.
Would you, let me ask you this. Would you trade or change your mind and say, I would rather have Josh Allen on the Browns if you could?
Yeah.
Okay.
Josh Allen's different than Baker Mayfield. Yeah, if I could go back.
I was just curious.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest tweets I ever made was like I did a draft day reenactment. I said anybody but Josh Allen at the time for the Browns, and it wasn't because like I didn't like Josh Allen's upside. It's like it's because I love Baker Mayfield's tape so much, and like the Browns were so bad at that point. Like I didn't want to take a project and a gamble. We would probably we taking Josh Allen. I probably almost guarantee he wouldn't be the Josh Allen he is.
Probably not.
He'd probably be married to some
Anthony Richardson.
I want to say something. I can't say in a podcast. And be out of the league, working somewhere because the Browns broke him. That's the curse of the Browns. So, yes, I would take Josh Allen. I'm not a silly Willie
Okay.
when it comes to stuff like that.
I was just
But
curious.
with Baker right now, for what you're getting, the value in these trades, it's absolutely worth it.
Let's hear some of it.
In Superflex, like wherever you get him to start up, it's going to be tremendous value. If you had him, he was your quarterback 3, quarterback 2 in this year. You're probably in your leagues. You're probably doing really, really well.
Absolutely. The trades right now: Baker Mayfield and T. Higgins
This one.
for a 25 first and a 25 second. That's it.
That's what T. Higgins is worth by himself.
I was going to say you're getting Baker Mayfield for free, or you're getting T. Higgins for free and Baker at a discount.
Veto.
It's one or the other way.
Veto.
It's one or the other.
I don't veto. Obviously not real vetoes because I'm not a vetoer, but veto.
Still, you're upset about it.
Listen, I'm writing a stern letter to the commissioner about this one.
This one at first got me until I saw the last piece of the deal. Lamar Jackson.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow, Lamar.
Okay,
It's heating
Baker
up.
Mayfield.
Lamar Jackson, number 1. Baker
A
Mayfield,
third.
number 2. Yeah.
But then you also get Brees Hall.
Yeah, easily Baker Mayfield, Brees Hall.
Yep.
Easily. I'm getting a high-end quarterback right now, and then they're literally the same age, same draft class.
Yep.
You know, Lamar relies on not just his legs. He's getting done with his arm too. I'm not.
He
this is no
has
disrespect.
improved
Lamar,
over the years.
Studly as Studly gets, right? Like dynasty gold. But once you throw Brees Hall into the equation, yeah, it's just pretty cool. Even if Baker wasn't quarterback 2, it was like averaging 5 points less a game than Lamar. Call it that 5 or even call it 6. I don't care. Brees Hall makes up the difference, like drastically per game. Like I'm totally okay with that. Smash except for that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm
Same
good.
with you.
Yep. Sorry.
No, you're good. Just making sure. Last but not
Wait,
least.
what about you, fancy face?
Oh, all of these easy for me. That's why I said in the beginning, like all of these feel like underpaid still.
gotcha.
Like all of them on Baker. Not necessarily all the trades, but on Baker. All of these still feel like underpaid. Last one, Baker Mayfield, just 1 first and Jalen Hyatt. Like
Okay, here, let me switch it up on you then. Let me switch this up on you.
Okay, switch
We'll make
it.
this interesting before we get to the last guy. Because I feel like this makes it interesting. Definitely because we know the class that it is.
okay.
Baker Mayfield, or say that 25 first is 1-1.
That does make it more difficult.
Superflex tight end premium.
I am at the point with Baker, and we're going to discuss this kind of stuff in the next episode when we talk about our rankings. But I did this morning, I spent a lot of time on my rankings, really thinking through some of these guys, and Baker was one of the big ones. I moved him ahead of the early first-round pick. So he has gotten to that point where I would take him over an early first.
Oh, I never had to move him up. Because
He was already there.
So I'm not a silly Willie. So 1-1 or Baker. I
Would take the
think-
Baker side.
I think I would take the Baker side. Like you're a contender,
Who?
and you just
Ashton
walked into
Genty.
1-1.
Ashton Genty.
Cam Ward.
Tet McMillan. Cam Ward right now looks like the top quarterback, but you have Shador. Carson Beck's really fallen off the past few weeks. throwing a lot
Cam
of
Ward's
picks.
from Miami, right?
Miami. Yep.
And he's doing really well.
He's one of the guys doing really, really well.
He looks pretty good.
6'2"-ish, right?
Yep.
Pretty solidly built. 6'2", correct?
More of a pass first guy, but
Yeah.
a very good athlete too.
Yeah.
Good arm.
Yeah, give me the picks.
And that's the thing. Oh, you're going
1-1?
big.
Yeah, give me the pick.
Oh,
if it's 1-1.
I expect you to say Baker, and I was like, oh, I was going to back you up, and I was like, wait, he said picks.
Yeah, give me the pick.
The hard part for me is
29 versus 21, and that's it.
I think that's fair, but we've seen a lot of quarterbacks within the top 4 picks lately just
fizzle.
be
Not
okay
yeah.
or fizzle. And some of it hit and been awesome.
Yeah.
You know, if you took Jayden Daniels, you're thrilled.
But you get
You know?
Jalen Hyatt on top.
You get,
I couldn't even get through that.
you know, if this was one of those ones, like if we could put some of these trades together and I like, it's JSN in 101, now that makes it really tough
Yeah.
for me. Like if it's one of those types of assets, that's
Yeah.
where it gets tough for me. But it would need to be an asset that legitimately moved the needle, not
it's,
just a
listen,
throw.
if it's locked in the 1-1, I just think it's a I don't want to say it's a better asset, but I think you get a lot for that as well. Like you're not
Like
necessarily
a Baker Mayfield.
I get what you're saying in terms of if you were to sell Baker Mayfield and sell the 101, you
Yeah.
would probably get more for
Get
the 101.
more.
I can, if you were dead set on selling them either way,
Yeah.
I could understand that. But if I had to choose one for my team,
Yeah.
I think I'm going Baker.
So I'm gonna give you a player that I think you probably get for 1-1.
Okay.
Drake May or Baker Mayfield.
The quarterback, Baker Mayfield. But I think you can do
Drake
better.
May's a quarterback too.
Or I think you're saying, in my brain, it was Drake London.
Oh, yeah, no.
I like the quarterback.
So Drake May.
Drake May.
Because I think I might actually, it depends where my team is. I would, if I have a ways to go, Drake May easily, if not Berger.
I think that's fair.
And I think that makes sense. And that's how I would look at it too.
Okay.
That one would be team dependent.
Oh, these are some tough, debatable questions.
Love it. Last one. Should we buy high on Jayden Daniels?
Dude, you can't.
Yes.
I don't care if you went on expedition and hit the accept button on Mount Everest. You can't.
Nothing's too high.
so confused.
Nothing
and then I
is too
started
high.
putting the high.
Cheech and Chong, Snoop Dogg, doesn't matter.
Ain't no valley low. I need some Jayden Daniels, man. Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's always a line not to cross.
There's a
here.
price. There's a price. But I mean, when you consider he's already been a top 3 quarterback for, up until this point, but he really only has one legitimate receiving option in Terry McLaurin, which is pretty impressive, especially when you look at, and look, I'm a Caleb Williams guy. I like Caleb Williams. He has really good receiving options. Jayden Daniels would love to have that receiving core because he's got Terry McLaurin. That's really it. So when you factor in all that, if this team is able to, whether it's free agency, draft, whatever, add another pass catching option, whether that's a tight end or maybe Ben Sinnott develops, they add a T Higgins, as a free agent. They, whatever it is, they do something to improve this receiving core. I mean, it's even possible that he could get better, maybe. I don't know.
You think a guy can get better?
I mean, it's hard to get much better than what he's been. That's the hard part. They've turned the ball over as a team 3 times up until this point. Like, that's absurd.
Yes, he can get significantly. The game will slow down for him a little, and he will get better.
Agreed.
Not just throwing the football, but running the football. And what I love here, too, is the most recent trades that you see in here, I think are very fair and respectable offers for all for Jayden Daniels. So let's get into them because I'm interested to see where you guys would lean. I would lean Jayden Daniels in both these trades.
Both of them. Okay.
But I will say this is like the offer that I would expect to come in my inbox for Jayden Daniels. That I don't feel, I'm like, wow, he really wants
He's serious.
Yeah,
he's serious. Yeah.
And one last thing before we get into those trades, we mentioned it, Lamar Jackson is the top guy as far as rushing, but Jayden Daniels, the second he comes in this league, is going to be the second best rushing quarterback in the league. And the numbers prove it. He's at 459 yards rushing. The only guy higher, Lamar Jackson, 505. So there's not even a big difference as far as the output that we're getting there. And Daniels has 4 rushing touchdowns versus the only 2 for Lamar Jackson. So it's
sometimes I'm sitting around doing the show. I'm like, man, are we ever right? Boy, are we ever? I'm just kidding.
Go ahead.
Crush it.
Go ahead. Let's dive into
Crush it. All right. First one, Jayden Daniels. And a fourth.
Got to get it back.
Got to get a little bit back. I need a little more.
Shot in the dark.
But here's what you're giving up to get him. You're giving up Jared Goff.
Okay.
Kirk Cousins. So you're giving up 2 quarterbacks.
2 QBs.
And a first and a second in 25. So Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins, a first and a second in 2025.
Well, that's number 12 and number 15, and that's kind of where they live, right?
Yeah, typically I think we've seen them as high as
7,
6, 7. But yeah, they live as kind of that low range quarterback 1 type guy. Kirk Cousins 36, I believe, 35, 36. Jared Goff is 29, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, this is like knocking on the door with a suit on. Like, you're coming very respectable.
Yeah,
like this is a good offer. To me, I would still decline it. And feel pretty good about declining it. The first and
you
second.
would take the Jayden Daniels side, is what you're saying.
I would want Jayden Daniels here. The first and second, what a great add-in to go on top. You're getting 2 quarterbacks back. So this is a great offer. If somebody only has Jayden Daniels and Jayden Daniels only, this is a really good offer for them. And they're getting the draft capital on top of that to go possibly get more. Kirk Cousins has got 2 years probably at best left in them before the Falcons make that move to Michael Penix regardless because they want to see what they have in their top 8.
Although he still could be a quarterback somewhere else even after that.
Could be.
We'll
definitely could be. Jared Goff playing for him a very high level right now, which is going to make him a quarterback 1, but like not a high end. Still, even though the weapons
he's not a top 6 guy.
He's not a top 6 guy, but a great asset. I'll take the guy that could be the number 1 overall fantasy player in fantasy football overall over all that any day of the week, and I'll figure else. I'll get my quarterback too, and I already have a first. That's fine. I don't need another gamble. Like these are the true unicorns, right? Like get in like Josh Allen as a rookie, get in Lamar like as a like these are the unicorn players that just don't come along, and their production can't be matched. You know, like their points per game on a points per game basis. Like for a running back to do that, they got to be an all-time great running back week in, week out. For a receiver to do it, they got to be Tyreek Hill, you know, like a crazy, like 1,700 receiving yard like that. These kind of quarterbacks, when you get a unicorn quarterback, the reason they're ranked where they're ranked in Superflex is because they're irreplaceable. Justin Jefferson doesn't get you Josh Allen, right? It could be because it's a fair trade, but fantasy football production, it's not.
You're gonna have to get more to get Josh Allen.
Yeah, it's not the same. Jane Daniels, Justin Jefferson, like don't cut like no. It's a no brainer. Jane Daniels for me. So that's like anytime I get a unicorn, you're talking top 30's one thing. If you have multiple top 12 players on your roster, that's a different reality you're living in than most players. And a lot of teams have, like I have multiple teams that have 2 top 12 players on their team. You know, like one has 3. Like those are clear-cut winners because those 3 players alone will year in and year out mostly carry your team
into the playoffs.
To the playoffs. And it's on you to build. It depends like how much time you put into the game of Dynasty, like, you know, like listen to podcasts, reading articles, like for you to fill out those other remaining 7 holes, 8 holes on your roster. Like if you do it right, like you have a long-term Dynasty. Like you're playing the game at that point to the highest level. So it takes an offer like that to even consider giving something like that up. But like, man, I would want more because I'm giving up that kind of asset. And not just that asset for the short term, like Jane Daniels or a guy like Lamar Jackson, for example, like those kind of players with Josh Allen, they give you those windows, that 8-year window of that production. Like that's impossible to come by. Like that's what makes draft picks worth what they're worth. Because that's a scratch-off lottery ticket. Where most of them we do the shows, like, yeah, most of these are going to be busts. But just like a scratch-off lottery ticket, you know you're probably going to lose 9 out of 10 times. But that one time you get on a player like this, that's where the gold
franchise-altering player.
And that's why those picks are so valuable because you're taking no shot. And unfortunately, like I'm an odds guy, I'm a poker player, and something along those lines. Where like, man, I would rather take this for sure thing over here than keep playing the lottery, right? Like I'll get to my $1 million a different way. Or you keep waiting here for the scratch off. And maybe you'll hit it on the first try. Maybe you're that lucky. But if not, again, I want those. That's what we're all striving to get. Not an abundance of good to solid, greatness. And that's what Jayden Daniels brings to the table. He's my number 2 overall Dynasty player overall in Superflex behind Josh Allen. And honestly, I keep asking myself this. At the same time, depending on the build I want to do, I was like, Rich, if I did a startup tomorrow and you had the 1-1, would you take Josh Allen still over Jayden Daniels? And in my head, I go, I don't know, man. There's a part of me that just wants to ride this Jayden Daniels train.
He's younger.
And I'm getting like 4 to 5 more years. And like, I think I might just want those 4 to 5 more years on this train and ride out. And this has a team with a new ownership that seems like they're committed to winning. If they would go out there and trade Marshawn Lattimore, he's on that rookie deal. I think once his rookie deal expires, he obviously shown that like definitely as he grows by that time point comes, like, doesn't need like elite tier receivers. He'll still always have that one. And Purdue still at a very high level of fantasy football. Unicorn player, dynamite. So glad it all transitioned so quickly for him from the tape we watched. These are the same comments I made after watching this tape. I said, man, if I had 10 leagues, 5 I want Jayden Daniels and 5 I want Caleb Williams because he looks that good. And I would hate to miss up that opportunity. You asked me the same question today. 10 out of 10 leagues, I'm taking Jayden Daniels. And I would probably give Jayden Daniels, if it's a late first, I would give Jayden Daniels plus a late first for Caleb Williams here just 10 games later and feel okay with it. Because again, that
to
first
get Jayden Daniels.
To get Jayden Daniels. Because that first might be some good player, it might not. And Caleb might be good, but as good as Caleb can get, it's going to be Jayden Daniels.
So you would give Caleb in a first to get Jayden Daniels.
Correct.
Yes.
That's what I was trying to
10
clarify.
games into the season. That's where I'm at on that already. It'd have to be a late first. It couldn't be a high first. But if I got my contender and I had a late first, that's what I would give.
And obviously, a lot of that is surrounded. He's surrounded by the fact that he's doing so well. The rushing upside is there because we did see a guy last year in CJ Stroud come in and do the same thing, and he hasn't had the same year in year 2. A lot of times you see that a rookie come out, look fantastic and then have a little bit of a downturn
Sophomore slump.
as the league kind of learns what they're not good at and kind of throws that at them week in and week out in their second year. So,
but I made those concerns about CJ Stroud too. Like I was like, I said this before on the show. Is like the reason I have CJ Stroud ranked so high is not because of the output he puts out. It's because he's a 22-year-old quarterback that thinks to be a quarterback one for a long time. Not because I think he's a top 6 fantasy quarterback. We saw that last year. He was quarterback 11. He's not even quarterback 11 this year. So, and you're right. The difference between him and Jayden Daniels is two things. Two things. Two things. So I thought about I like Jayden Daniels' deep ball better than CJ Stroud. I like Zachary that way. And two, the rushing ability is such a massive piece of the pie that it matters. Like it's staying there between a pass catcher running back and just a running quarterback. Right?
No doubt about it.
Difference. I think there's a very fine line between CJ Stroud and Jayden Daniels when it comes to fantasy football output.
I think the good ones can come out and look good year one. The great ones, when they struggle, they're able to kind of calibrate and readjust to the league once they've adjusted. So we'll see if CJ Stroud's just good or if he's great. We don't know yet on Jayden Daniels one way or another. He looks good so far. And I would say he's passed the good test. We'll see what happens when the league adjusts to him, if he can flip that switch and become a great.
Speaking of recalibrating to becoming great,
it's a greatness.
The last trade, this one was actually a little bit harder for me because I did also take Daniels on the top one. This one was a little bit harder for me because if there's one guy I don't want to count out, it's Patrick Mahomes. And so the deal is Jayden Daniels for Patrick Mahomes and Devonta Smith. Then you get the 4th and 5th. Like, who cares about those? Right. But getting Devonta Smith on top made this decision really, really difficult for me.
Pat Mahomes from his first 30-point game. First time he's done that in 17 games that he's done that. So it's been a while, but he's always going to have that capability. You can bring a guy like DeAndre Hopkins in. Could have been exactly what they were missing, like a good red zone threat, a receiver that can go up and get the football. D-Hop looked absolutely fantastic. I love that he tweeted out a picture today of Brady and Moss hugging. Like, I love that. Gets my shirt a little bit more sensitive when it comes to seeing my chesticles. And for me, like, that's tough to get up, but to get 5 years younger, to give up Devonta Smith. Again, I love Devonta Smith. Yeah, I think he's dynamic. I just wish Devonta Smith was on a different team than
where he didn't have to share. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
just do this.
I would rather just keep swinging my draft picks on other receivers to try and get Devonta Smith and have Jayden Daniels in my back pocket than just having Pat Mahomes and Devonta Smith. Yep. So to me, it's close, but I'm doing Jayden Daniels. Close, though.
I still have not formally made a decision. Have you, Matt?
Have I? No, that one is difficult. And, this would come down to the team, obviously. Jayden Daniels is a great player. I think you're getting such a known in Patrick Mahomes, and I just discussed how I feel like Jayden Daniels, I know he's good. I've seen enough to know that he's good. I don't know that he's great because I haven't seen the league adjust to him yet. And the NFC in general, the only time they really saw a player like this was when they played Lamar Jackson. They had a very bad record against Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson against NFC teams was like 29-2 or something ridiculous.
Sure.
Now they're getting a chance to see a player like this more often. And how long does it take for that side of the league to kind of adjust and figure it out? We'll see. But I would probably still lean towards Patrick Mahomes and Devonta Smith on this one, but it's really close. Really close.
It's a trade you'll live to regret. I hope you live. Oh, you want to regret?
I'm gonna take Daniels.
No, I might.
I want to take Mahomes because that's one player I never want to count out ever. But I do think we could have, even though Mahomes has never finished below 7, I think we might have more years of him in that 4 to 7 range.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to be getting the next 5 years of Jayden Daniels being a top 3 type of guy.
And the way I look at it is like the difference between what I had to give up for, let's say it was Mahomes and Daniels straight up, right? Like what I'd have to give on top for Mahomes, I could probably go get like a George Pickens. So like rather have Jayden Daniels and George Pickens or Devonta Smith and Pat Mahomes. Like that's pretty easy for me too. I feel like I could offset that Devonta Smith like with my first round pick.
Sure. But now you're giving Jayden Daniels in a first.
But like would you rather have Would you give Jayden Daniels? Would you give Pat Mahomes in a first today for Jayden Daniels? Say it's, you have Pat Mahomes. Say it's a later first. So
I would give the first because to me Smith is worth a little bit more than a first, so I would give Mahomes in a first,
like a fourth and fifth.
like a fourth and fifth maybe.
Yeah, because I would, but that's what I'm saying. Like, so that first, I feel like with that first, and I probably have to give up obviously a little bit more, but like again, I'd rather give up a little bit more, like a first and second for George Pickens, than I would like that deal still ain't coming through for Jayden Daniels because he falls in that unicorn category. So again, it's just an opportunity to get one of those guys. Is Pat Mahomes, was he one of those guys? 100%. But now he's 29, could have 8 more years, probably does, which is a long time. But you can say Jayden has another 12, 13. Like, I just want to hold on. And you're right. I agree with you. Like, there's a difference between top 3 production and like top 7 overall production.
What happens to your argument if next week he breaks a run to the outside and is broken?
That is the one small part of me that has been a little bit hesitant. Is
I wanted to put
worry
that
about
point out
injuries.
there
I do worry about
what
that.
if Pat Mahomes gets broken? I mean, yeah, I get it. No,
we've seen Patrick Mahomes get injured
right.
and come back and do it. I've seen Jayden Daniels, who has a slight frame for a running quarterback, take some hits, dude, that are ill-advised, and it makes me nervous to just,
I get that,
for the long-term view of him as a player, that he needs to, that's a part of his game that's always going to make me nervous until he learns how to kind of get down or avoid those kind of hits. But we've seen it going all the way. I mean, I saw the most massive pile driver I've ever seen in a hit
by George Pickens the other week.
No, Jayden Daniels getting destroyed, I think, in that Florida State game. Yeah. So it's something that he's kind of had a hard time with going back to college, even. So I don't know.
All right,
I get it, but I'm still getting risky with JD.
Okay.
Give it to me. Mount Everest high. Like, give me all, like, to the point like I'd consider.
I mean, some people would say Rocky Mountain High.
Hey, there you go.
I don't want to fly in the mountains. So sorry, John.
Sorry, dude.
All right. I think we're good.
Yeah.
I think that wraps everything
I think
up.
that wraps it up.
I didn't know. Was there something else I was supposed to say?
No.
Okay. You want me to say adios?
Adios.